Hey friends! My name is Desiree, aka Mama Friendly. I do vlogs, hauls, cooking videos, homeschool videos, planner videos, just a little bit of everything. If any of these things sound like fun to you, I hope that you'll subscribe and join my little YouTube family. Today's video is extra special because once again I'm participating in the cookbook collab hosted by my friend Tamara over at Southern Wife Everyday Life. As always, I'm going to be posting a link in the description box both to her channel and to the playlist so you can see what all of our other YouTube friends have come up with for this collab. I've participated in this collab twice before, and both times I've done Cuban recipes. This time I decided to do a complete left turn, and I'm doing some classic American dessert. So here's some background for you. When I was a kid, mostly my grandmothers cooked. I don't remember my parents cooking a whole lot. I remember a lot of Happy Meals and pizza delivery and the occasional home-cooked meal from my parents, but for the most part, it was my grandmothers that cooked and kids were not really allowed in the kitchen. I always thought cooking seemed like a lot of fun, but as a child, I didn't really get a whole lot of opportunity to participate. My parents had so many cookbooks. A lot of them they still have to this day. And I remember being an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid leafing through cookbooks and kind of daydreaming about all the stuff I was going to cook when I was grown. I don't know, was I the only one that did this? I might have been the only one that did this. Anyways, I thought that this collab was the perfect opportunity to make my childhood dreams come true. So I went and found this cookbook. This is a Pillsbury country cooking cookbook, and it actually came as a set of 4, a boxed set. This was one of the many cookbooks that I used to leaf through, look at the pictures and go, wow, that looks good. One day I'm gonna make that. So I found a very simple dessert recipe for apple dumplings that I thought looked really yummy, looked super easy to throw together, and more importantly for me, easy to make gluten and dairy free. This recipe is definitely not low carb, but we all need a splurge now and then. Moderation is key, am I right? So I'm very happy that Tamara finally gave me a reason or excuse to make one of these recipes. And with all that being said, let's get cooking. So to start, the original recipe calls for a 15-ounce package of Pillsbury all-ready pie crusts. I'm using these gluten-free ones because we are gluten and dairy-free typically. I let them defrost according to the directions for 20 minutes at room temperature, and I've got the oven preheating at 400 degrees. Gluten-free crusts are never as pliable as your typical crusts, so I imagine if you are using the Pillsbury all-ready pie crusts as instructed, as directed, they will probably be a lot easier to work with than what I've got, but we're going to make it work all the same. So while I'm trying to smooth out my pie crust over here, I want to direct your attention behind my hands. I have 4 Granny Smith apples that I have peeled, cored, and sliced. I'm going to end up cutting this pie crust into half and the other pie crust into half as well. So we're going to have 4 baked apples at the end of this, 4 dumplings. I'm going to put one of these Granny Smith apples into each of these pie crust halves. In this bowl, I'm going to be mixing up our cinnamon sugar. The recipe also says you should add 2 tablespoons of raisins to this, but my family is not a big fan of raisins in desserts, so I decided to leave them out. The recipe says to use a 1/4 cup of sugar and a teaspoon of cinnamon. When it comes to seasonings, I tend to just, like I always say, measure with your heart and let your ancestors tell you when to stop, so that's pretty much what I did here. So you want to take roughly a 1/4 of your cinnamon sugar mixture and put it into and onto each of these apples. Once you've done that, do your very best to kind of surround the apple in your pie crust or your pie crust dough, as it were. Again, if you're using a typical pie crust, you're probably going to have an easier time than I did with my gluten-free one, but we're making it work all the same. So once I've done these 2, I'm going to move on to the next 2. So here's our 4 apple dumplings pretty much ready to go. I am using a parchment lined baking sheet, and it's a baking sheet with a rim. You want to make sure you have one with a rim. The parchment paper is optional, but I highly recommend it to kind of cut down on the mess. So these are ready to bake. I'm going to do a little bit of an egg wash first to give them some toasty, roasty brown color. And you're going to want to bake these apples at 400 degrees for 15 minutes to start. While our apples are starting to bake, you're going to want to start on your sauce. So in a small saucepan, you want to bring half a cup of sugar, 1 cup of water, a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 2 tablespoons of margarine or butter to a boil. I'm using ghee, which is clarified butter. That means that it has the protein, the milk protein removed. So we are a dairy-free family typically, but every once in a while we will use ghee because the allergenic part has been removed. So that's what I'm doing here. As far as the cinnamon, I just kind of threw in what looked right to me, but I did stick to the 1/2 cup sugar and 1 cup water measurements. Once it's come to a boil, you want to keep it boiling there for 2 minutes. The idea is for everything to come together and start to reduce, but it doesn't have to get thick or anything. That's going to happen in the oven. This was ready before I needed it, so I just kept it kind of simmering on low heat until the 15 minutes were up. Once they are, you do want to give them those 15 minutes so that the crust has a chance to cook a bit. You can open up your oven and pour that sauce over your partially baked dumplings. So you're essentially creating a cinnamon caramel that these dumplings are going to finish cooking in. So be very careful while you're doing this. Obviously, this is very hot. You're going to go ahead, close your oven back up, and bake for an additional 25 to 30 minutes until the crust is deep golden brown and the apples are tender. So this is what they look like coming out of the oven. The crust did not exactly hold. Again, that's the perils of gluten-free baking. And one of them just completely fell over. But you know what? That just adds to the homemade charm and character. I don't think there's anything wrong with this at all. My family absolutely loved this recipe. These were delicious, and I've already had requests to make them again. 10 out of 10 would recommend. This recipe was a huge success. It was 20 some odd years in the making, so I'm glad that it did not disappoint. I'd love to know, is there any recipe that you've always wanted to make but haven't gotten around to yet? Let me know what it is in the comments. And if you decide to make this recipe yourself, I'd love to hear how it turns out for you. As always, I'd love to thank Tamra for hosting this collab and inviting me to participate. The link to her channel is in the description box, as I said earlier, along with the link to the playlist so you can see what all of our other friends have cooked. Go show them some love, let them know I sent you, and I hope you have a fantastic day. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll please give it a big thumbs up. I'd also love it if you'd subscribe and click that notification bell because I post at least 3 times a week and I wouldn't want you to miss a minute. Thanks so much again for watching. Bye!